G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Trewin. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome everyone. Today I'm interviewing Levi Slavin from Ironclad Co. based in Auckland, New Zealand. Thanks for your time today, Levi.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We've been talking for half an hour before, and I thought, shit, we better hit record because there's so many good things in what we were discussing. So hopefully we capture all that today as well. Let's start with how we know each other. I saw you in the media somewhere, and I love your product. I've got a good mate in Melbourne, the ex-lead singer of our band back when I had hair 25, 30 years ago. Geez, that's 30 years ago. And he absolutely loves products like yours. He's passionate about it. And I found it fascinating when I stay with him, just how precious he is about his pan, which we're going to get into in a minute. And then I decided to stalk you on LinkedIn. I thought you had a great growth story. You also did a crowdfund, which we'll talk about. And I thought our audience will get a lot of value out of having a chat.
Amazing, thank you. And it's lovely to hear. It's brilliant to hear that he's enjoying it and caring for it.
Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
We are, I work for a company called Ironclad Co. There are 3 founders, my wife, and kind of a very close friend. And we manufacture, well, the core value really is that we sort of experiment with small changes with everyday objects to make them more sustainable. I think, you know, we like most people started kind of this terrible last 5 years or so, wondering what to do and how to do it. And I feel like, a penny dropped for us when we started to do some research into, positive moves rather than the fear of the negative. It's the Stagmeister, the designer, did a brilliant talk on the carrot versus a stick in terms of, environmental change. And so we've sort of dedicated ourselves to trying to find emotional ways to make products last longer, and technical ways to make them more sustainable, rather than sort of this doom and gloom about how terrible everything is, because it feels like one thing at a time is more manageable than everybody get under the table,
And so what's the first product that you've rolled out?
Well, we did it's a cast iron range, and whilst cast iron's probably, it's pretty difficult to innovate in cast irons, it's probably like the oldest product to be manufactured and potentially traded or sold. One of the things that we loved about it was a conversation about sustainability through the lens of longevity. And the inspiration for it was a family story, which I'll touch on in a minute. But the object itself comes with a 3-generation guarantee cast into the base of it. So should anything happen, we'll replace it, no matter what. And that is the equivalent of a 100-year guarantee. So it was an interesting conversation with our lawyer writing that contract, but we kind of got there. But it was it's the first object is is a conversation about why are we throwing things out? Why can't we just buy something beautiful and high quality once?
And that must be, and I know we were talking about this before we hit record, but that's something that struck me when I came across, actually, I think I know where I found you guys. It was when you're doing a crowdfund. So I looked at your investment memorandum, which I grabbed a copy of, but I thought, wow, that's an interesting business model. You got a 100-year guarantee on this thing. So, surely you don't get any repeat customers.
That's been such an interesting conversation to have, because we have done in the last sort of 12 to 18 months, we've had a few conversations with some people to raise equity in the company, people to invest, and it's a conversation that is almost the first question
Yeah.
Why would I invest in a company that you buy once for 3 generations and someone hands it down to someone, hands it down to someone? Why on earth would I invest in that? Because basically surely there's a point where it caps, or, no repeat purchase. But because it's a demonstration, the guarantee is a demonstration of quality and longevity and sustainability. People who experience it and buy it come back, and it actually has blown us away. I think the number is sort of around 27% of our
Wow.
customers return to buy
Yep.
another product or another pan as a gift. It's one of those things that I think the efficiency versus quality in a production process is something I think that everybody faces. But when you just absolutely dedicate yourself to quality,
Yep.
people can see it, and I think that that's been a real advantage for us. It's an expensive process, but it's something that's very valuable to us and our customers.
But you get that money back because you've built such an amazing product. The word of mouth is strong, and that is inexpensive marketing right there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's an interesting sort of I guess it's an interesting advantage, I suppose, for a company that is centered around conversation and downtime. Because if we're at the table, on the table during dinner parties, it is a conversation point. That's just been an extraordinary advantage for us, because it's meant that we've got a built-in piece of communication in the object itself, rather than having to run ads constantly on Facebook and feed the Zuckerberg machine.
Yeah. And how did you start out?
We had an idea to do this sustainable object and have a guarantee in it. For us, it just felt like such an exciting concept, and um, the search for cookware, I think, was an obvious one. I brought this along. My it's sort of, the company really is just a love story to my grandmother, whose name was Lillian, and she was an immigrant from Russia and moved to Australia. And she was just the best human I've ever met in my entire life. And she was the most superb chef, like proper. It was just extraordinary. And the scope and the brilliance of what she made was pretty daunting. And when she passed, sadly, I received some of her kind of cookware, some of which had been handed down before her, like multiple generations, and she'd brought that across to Australia from Russia. And there's one little thing, I'll just show you. I don't know if we're filming this, but there's one little thing here. This is the last sort of handwritten recipe from Lil. It's the last page in a notepad, and she's got no instructions on how to measure it. But this is from a phone conversation with her mother, and she's writing down a recipe for this Russian cheesecake. And so for us, there was sort of this whole lovely, very motivating emotional story about longevity being sustainability and cherishing, your part in a long journey of kind of a culinary story. So for us, that's where it started. I mean, I'm just, I make things that she used to make in the same object that she used to make it, and it does more than feed you. Like it's transformative. It makes a bad day better. It cheers you up. It does all sorts of things. And my sons are now cooking Lil's omelets. So I don't know. But for us, it's a very important connection between not just a sustainable object with no emotional attachment, but the journey itself, which is handing it down and protecting it.
And before I forget, so what's your distribution model? Is it just direct to consumer, or do you sell through, outlets?
It's a brilliant question for us. We've predominantly gone direct customer. We launched during the pandemic. I mean, honestly, like our timing is hilarious. If ever you want basically a crisis book for business, we'll just send you what to do at each chapter in a disaster. But we launched during kind of the lockdown, and what happened was, just by chance, I suppose, people started to return to investing in, home cooked meals because we were locally manufactured. We had they had access to us. And so that just naturally built a network for us, and it was the start of a community. The growth that's happened, I think, since 2019 to 2022 has been an interesting curve because we've seen it peter out naturally because direct customer is, it's kind of a topic of conversation. It's shifting to kind of a retail presence. I mean, even stores like Nike are like doubling down on brick and mortar stores again. And I guess the challenge with our particular product is it's all handmade, and the majority of people who were buying it had no idea that there was someone who poured it, and someone who finished it, and then someone who seasoned it, usually me or Kate, and we put it in a box and posted it to them. And fulfilling a retailer is impossible with those margins and that sort of type of product. So we were capped by the craft, really. That was something we struggled to kind of deliver 600 pans to kitchen warehouse with. It's just impossible. So what we've spent sort of the last year looking at is creating or maintaining a direct customer model with a premium product, which is all absolutely, handcrafted, hand poured, hand finished, but beyond belief. And then having working with foundries that can produce at scale to a quality that we believe in and can back with our guarantee, of course. And that's going to allow us to fulfill retail orders with their margins, because of course that's another, I'm sure you guys have spoken about that in the podcast in the past, that's just can be quite crippling, especially when you're looking at high-end retailers. So yeah, we need to basically try and maintain a top quality product made of the best recycled cast iron, and just see if we can build a margin in there for retailers to be attractive to them.
And which countries do you sell in at the moment?
We're completely dedicated to New Zealand and Australia. We have the strangest requests because we've got this sort of this top end product, which is, got our secret sauce of, a single human being that does all the finishing, is just a master craftsman. And we get, like, those are called the heirlooms, and they're, just genuinely, I'm biased, but I think it's the best cast iron on the planet, inside and out. And the orders will always be direct to customer on that, because they can tailor make the messaging on the base of it and that sort of thing. And those ones, we get requests from like Poland, and somebody, the third, ordered one from Wisconsin the other day. So it's kind of trickling out. Our story is trickling out, but we're certainly not fanning the flames of that yet. Again, because of fulfillment, it's a hard product to do at pace.
So we'll just go back to how you started out. Maybe go back to where you started your career, etc. If you went to university or jobs in other businesses.
Yeah, I started as a designer. I studied design and advertising. I'm Australian originally, probably lost the accent by now. But started out in Australia studying design and advertising, and then quickly learned that I was terrible at design once I had my first job, because we had these extraordinary art directors around me. So I switched to advertising, trying to hold on for dear life to employment, and ended up sort of working as a writer for the next 25 years, really, and worked, in agencies all over the place. Been a bit of a nomad in London and New York and Auckland multiple times, Australia, just about every state in Australia. And so I've kind of, like, over that time, been very fortunate to work with honestly, some icons of the communications industry, and just be a bit of a fly on the wall and learn as much as I possibly could. And there was a sort of a point, I think, the company started whilst I was running an agency called Colenso, which is a sort of a little agency in New Zealand that punches well above its weight creatively, has done for years. And there was a moment in time where we said, let's start this company. And my wife and Joe went full time on it. And probably 2 years or 3 years after they went full time, I joined them. And that was the year of floods and all sorts of chaos. But it's been something I would never go back. I just absolutely love it. Absolutely love it.
And what year did the business start? Was it 2018?
End of 18, beginning of 19.
Yeah. And you joined full-time 2020?
Yes. 20, it was actually 2021, I think,
Yeah.
from memory.
And how old were you when the business started in 2018? 6 years ago. 6 years.
6 years ago, I'd probably just clocked 40.
Yeah. Great. Do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over those 6 years?
Yeah, well, I mean, we've got, I mean, despite having a history of working in advertising, maybe that's sort of kind of why I was interested in running a model that didn't rely on advertising as a means to growth. So our product itself, comes with the guarantee cast into the iron. Um, very fortuitously, it's at the center of conversations. When people get together, it's kind of the heart of the table. So, it does tend to grow quite organically. The sales tend to kind of be word of mouth. And so over that time, I think we've sort of naturally seen big steps, and we have about 100% revenue growth year on year from 19 to 2022. And I think I mean, you probably know this better than me. I'm terrible with numbers. We had $1 billion revenue or something.
I've got your IM in front of me here. So for the audience, the New Zealand financial year ends 31 March. So in 2022, you closed just over $1.5 million. The year before that was $1
Yeah,
million.
yeah,
The year before that was half. Yeah.
yes, yeah. And I think what stunted us really was our the final year, the year I joined. We were hit by just this extraordinary biblical flood in New Zealand. I don't know if you guys got coverage of that, but we were hit twice. Our house was hit and our company was hit. But of course, I was at the house trying to let water out of walls and totally forgot about our business, which was nestled at the bottom of a hill. And so the following morning, I got a phone call from Joe saying, you probably need to come and have a look. And it was, I get choked up thinking about it because it was everything. It was covered in not just water, but it was wastewater. And so for a product that's indestructible, we couldn't exactly kind of just refire it and sand it down. I just didn't want to, none of us wanted to sell something that had been touched like that. And so that was, oh God, a journey of trying to do insurance claims. And because all of our money always is tied up in iron, it's what we invest in to get through. We got pretty close to the wall during that, but I think it forced us to make some really hard decisions that we never would have done. I think we're too nice, and we had to make some really tough calls. And the company is, I'm flying now, I think, because of it. Stuff that we never would have done, which has been super good. We kind of joke that we're crisis ready. That's our management team motto.
And how many full-time equivalent team members did you start with and where you're at now?
Well, when we started, it was 3. That was like way back. I write all the EDMs and like all of the website copy and all of that sort of stuff, which is pretty fun to get back on the tools. My wife does all of the product design, all the design work, and Joe is an extraordinary partnerships lead. Basically, he's just a super fan of brands and business, and just contacts people fearlessly. And so that kind of combination felt extraordinary to us. We weren't kind of financially led; we were design led, and we started with those three people. I think our first kind of hires were we moved into doing our own fulfillment, and so it was people who were jacks of all trade who could kind of box and pack and also do customer service. That was actually sadly the first thing to go because we'd lost our warehouse and everything. So those people have sort of stayed on in other capacities. And then I think we're at about 7 now. And we've made a very deliberate decision to, have specialists beyond our core group, because the core group is, I mean, as you know, like running your own company it's impossible to ask anybody to care about it as much as you do. And it feels unfair to ask anybody to think about it as much as you do. But the people we've found, I think, will just be with us for life. That's the hope anyway. They're just extraordinary. And then we've got this range of specialists who are just best in class, and we pay them monthly retainers. And so we've got quite a broad group of people, but probably 7 on payroll.
So 7 FTE on payroll. How many of those contractors or freelancers roughly would that roll up to FTE?
It'd be, I guess we'd probably be looking at like 10 or 11.
10 or 11, wow.
I'm sorry, I'm sort of struggling to figure it out, but
that's great.
We've got like dedicated PR people and
yep.
So on.
Yeah, awesome. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
I don't think I've had that yet.
I have to change this question because nearly everyone fucking answers that way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have. I think there was I stopped calling my mum to tell her about the ads I'd done probably when I was late 20s. And I phoned her the other day when we've been sort of approached by a publishing house to do a series of cookbooks. We've got A-grade chefs investing, and we just had a chat on the phone about that, and that was probably a week ago. That felt successful, but it was chat to me mum. I don't think it's like a Forbes worthy success, but it feels like we're getting there. Yeah.
What does success look like to you?
This is such a great question, because I think and this is my hypothesis, but I think there's a real illusion in business because of, especially with social media, that there are sort of these very clear goals and objectives and catchphrases and people succeeding, like serial entrepreneur. I just can't stand as a title. There's sort of like a kind of it's the same in social media. You look at all of these people succeeding and selling and so on, and I think that I was guilty for a long time of trying to compare what we were doing to other companies that had nothing to do with us. For example, there's a company called Liquid Death that is an ex-advertising person's, water company. It's just, I mean, it's worth more than planet Earth, I think. And we're just not that company. We're slow. We make stuff that lasts, and it's meaningful, hopefully. So I think it was the beginning of this year. We all sat down together and said, well, what do we want out of this? Because, last year was total crisis mode, and we just were day to day, just getting through. And we sat down together, and it came up, like a buyout came up as a conversation, and we were like, well, if that were to happen, that would be fantastic. And then we started to sort of talk through, who would be a possible candidate for that. And that's where we started to feel like we were almost designing the company for a business or a brand to buy rather than for a customer to experience. And so we sort of made a very conscious decision beginning of this year to make it a company that we want to keep forever. I think in doing that, it will be, we'll focus on the stuff that's really rewarding, like the customer relationships, the product innovations, the eco product innovations, which we've got a lot of, and making stuff that lasts. And I think I could be really happy doing that for a very long time. My 7-year-old has already been appointed as a CEO in waiting. He's promised to join when he's got maths sorted. And he I don't know, like I love the idea of actually changing the way we talk about these things. What if we just made a company that was fabulous to work at and made great things? I think that then if somebody did approach us, for example, we'd be in a really hard situation. Like I'd love for us to create a company that, when we hit that crossroads, it was a super hard decision, because I think that's when you've made something meaningful to you and for culture.
It's a really good approach to think how to think about exiting, I think, Levi. Yeah, it's something a different way haven't heard of before, and I really like it.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I probably it's me alone on this podcast. Joe's probably going to be messaging me in a minute saying, "What are you talking about?"
You're killing off any suitors that might look at us.
That's
Edit that out.
right. That's right. So you can also call Joe. The number is on screen right now.
Yep. Now, perfect question for you. One, absolutely love your brand. I know it's a bit of a background from your career, but what's the number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
We're being a small company. We've taken every course you can think of. We've studied a lot of ecom. We've studied a lot of everything. And coming from a branding or brand first background, what's fascinating is the presence that brand can have in every single channel. And that scope really as an advertiser was limited, because we would be one part of a marketer's day and one part of kind of their service for communications. But when you just bring brand to the heart of everything you do, it forces you to understand what it is that you do that's different. That's our old strategist Mylene used to say, "What's your contribution to this world beyond profit?" Which I used
Hmm.
to love. And so you understand exactly what it is that you do, and then how does every service fulfill on that product? And by service, it could be even like a checkout, or it could be gift with purchase, or a particular day that we celebrate. And so I think if it's probably really old fashioned thinking, but I was so thrilled to know that I wasn't redundant when I moved from brand world to running a brand. It's definitely training that I didn't realize that I was getting for many years leading up to it. So yeah, double down on brand.
I totally agree. Have you heard of Mark Ritson, or have you read any of his stuff?
I have. I wrote to him to get some advice on Ironclad, and he never wrote back. If he's out there, like, thanks for the reply, Ritson. I actually we did an MBA course with him through a company I used to work at, and so I had a cocktail with him as well. I thought that meant something, but it didn't, obviously.
Oh, I had him on the podcast. He's a top bloke. He actually lives just 20 minutes south of Hobart, where I live. And then the week after the podcast, we went out for a beer. The first time I met him in person, I seen him speak. It's a funny story at the start of the cast where I just kind of set him up from when I heard him speak first, because all my business marketing mates had raved about him. Three or four of them had done their MBA at Melbourne Uni when he was their marketing professor, just raved about him, and my marketing guru friends, the content, etc. We went out for a beer at my local pub at the time in Hobart, and because he's English, he drinks pints, and went out with another marketing mate, and it was a rather large night. I went back the next night, and all the bar staff there know my name, and Rob said, "You don't drink pints." I said, "No shit, Sherlock. You can't spell RSA. I was shit-faced last night, thanks to Mark Ritson." But yeah, his material is excellent. He's got 25 years as a marketing professor before he pivoted online 7 or 8 years ago. Now he's got the mini MBA in marketing and mini MBA in brand management. They've had when we recorded that cast, I think it was last year, that had at that point 20,000 people through it. So they've got a lot of great reviews and ratings. Yeah.
He's absolutely amazing. Like I'm underplaying it. Part of the reason I wrote to him was because there was I would thoroughly recommend it. He's an extraordinary storyteller too, and a great equalizer in opinion. He doesn't hold back on anything. But he took us through a case study, a Snapple case study that was, I don't know, that's the thing I wrote to him about, really, because it was life-changing for me. There was basically, in this tiny little story, there was basically everything, worst case, best case. It was almost like a fable. So I don't know if anybody out there has read it or not read it, I would definitely look it up. It's just the journey of Snapple from day one to the day they moved to Bermuda and bought islands, I suppose, whatever their success was. But his way of talking us through that really just, I mean, that stuck with me forever.
Yeah, he's a great storyteller and he swears almost as much as me, or probably more than me, actually. How did you fund the business? So we'll obviously talk about the crowdfund in a minute, but before you got to the crowdfund, how was the business funded?
Yeah, it was completely self-funded. I mean, this year we did a capital raise, or last year, sorry, we did a capital raise, and the people who invested were our customers, which is what was so heartwarming because it's the same people that pulled us out of the floods were the ones that kind of patted us on the back and told us that we were doing okay, and that's meant everything to us. So that's the only external fundraising we've had aside from a really early investor who's basically a long-term friend who's one of the producers of Chef's Table. So they came in super early, and that's been amazing to have their guidance and help. And then we did a capital raise. Everything else basically has been self-funded. So it's completely bootstrapped.
So you had a small raise from your existing customers, and then a private raise, and then the crowdfund.
No, we had it's been very early on. Basically, I was working for them for a good few years, so I was paying everybody. And then when I joined full time, that's when we had our first external investor. It wasn't a big investment, but it was for a percentage of the company because we wanted to be doing it with working with the best and communicating at that level. And Chef's Table for us is an emotional storytelling, just at its best, really. Culinary storytelling, which is what we wanted to do. And that was the first investment, outside investment. And then we did our cap raise last year. And so we've only really done, I guess you'd call it two. The first one for me just feels more like a partnership rather than a cap raise.
You did the crowdfund on the Equitize platform. When did that close? Your campaign close? What month? Last year?
Or it would be, I think it was October or November. Might have. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I've
No,
lost
that's right.
track.
October, November 23, and I've got the numbers here in front of me. So you had a minimum raise of 300,000, a maximum of 1.25 million New Zealand, and you raised just over $500,000. That's terrific.
Yeah, it was wonderful. Incredible support. Incredible support, and that was our um, customers. That was our community. We've got something 50,000 plus followers and 200 chefs, I think, that we work with. And you know what we love about this is it's very democratic as a company, and so we've having it co-owned by the people who've been there and helping us from the beginning is such a great feeling.
It is. And they're brand ambassadors for you now as well.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
If you were a startup today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Yes. If you asked me that even a year ago, I probably would have said no. Um, I think if you're trying to like my wife Kate is an amazing designer and diplomat, and that I think is the only reason we've succeeded because we're halfway between heavy industry and art, and there is no way that those two can have a calm conversation together because one is too precious and the other is too you know um, loose with their production. And so I think the only way that we've succeeded is by having someone who is just loved by both the craft and the manufacturers. And in doing that, we resurrected a New Zealand industry that had been closed for a very, very, very long time, that we weren't manufacturing cast iron when we started, which we're super proud of. And in Australia, there was no cast iron being manufactured there when we started. There's a couple of other companies that do like wrought iron, which is really impressive products. But cast iron, it definitely was we had to break new ground, if that makes sense. So now we've done that. Yes, I would do this again.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so audience can learn from it?
The most stressful point really was just being thrown into the floods. That it was, the best made plans. I think there's something about that. Someone intelligent said at some point. And I think that's, to us, was when we realized that nothing is static. Like anything can happen at any time. And the minute we kind of just let go a little bit and went a little bit with the flow of the way things move, um, it got less stressful and more manageable in an interesting way. But learning that when everything was taken away, and we had insurance that didn't pay, and landlords that charged us for rent for a soggy building and all sorts of things. That was just a moment in time that I think we went from being, we know what we're doing, to we have no idea what we're doing, and that's kind of our advantage.
What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
Definitely finance. And I'm so bad at this. I used to, our head of the CFO at the agency I used to work at used to joke about how I'd put on my interested face when he would be doing the numbers.
Never heard that one.
And he saw through me, which was really funny. I even tried to take notes once, but I don't know. It's not my skill set, and I think I don't have a passion for it, but it's a necessity.
Who looks after the numbers then out of?
Joe and Kate are both particularly good in that area, but to me, it's a key part of our growth. If I want to be able to continue to do what we do, we need to be profitable, and I don't know. That's been a very steep learning curve for me.
What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
I think it's probably our retail presence. I think that's been the hardest, because we can see the opportunity there, and just because of the way we manufacture, we weren't able to fulfill, and that felt very frustrating, I think, for all three of us. There would be retailers who contacted us, which is pretty unheard of. We were under the radar in Australia, and basically everybody that represents and sells us contacted us, and we weren't able to fulfill at the scale they needed us to fulfill, and that was frustrating at many moments, especially when we knew we needed it for growth. But yeah, I think that's just the nature of evolving and getting sharper with manufacturing, without compromising on what you make, which is our journey at the moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, mate, I'd seriously consider your business model before you start driving down that road of selling, moving away from just the direct to consumer model. Whether you stay premium and you just double down going online, I'd seriously look at that. And ironically for you, look at the numbers. And from a lifestyle point of view as well, it just may be, a better model to keep. There's a great example who I'll hopefully get on the podcast one day. But have you heard of Flow Hive out of Byron Bay?
Yes, yeah, I have.
So Cedar and his father invented this hive, which you just crank the handle and the honey comes out. You don't need to put on those funny white suits, etc. Or maybe you still do, but it just makes collecting honey really easy. And they needed to raise $70,000 US, is probably nearly 10 years ago now, 2016, I think it was. The tooling equipment to start manufacturing for orders. So they did a pre-sales crowdfund, not selling equity, but like people could pledge, if you build this, I want a hive or two hives or whatever. And so by the time they took that campaign down, 2 months later, they just wanted 100 grand Aussie it was in the end, and they ended up raising, I think it was 17 million Australian dollars within 2 months of pre-orders. So I'm pretty sure they've just kept with We're just a direct to consumer online, local
Yeah,
manufacturing, ship all around the world, and they've skipped going that wholesale distributor level.
yeah. It's a great example. Like we debate this a lot. I think the a key turning point for us was we've got one object that's called the heirloom, which has got countless hours of finishing time. It's all 100% recycled iron. It's hand poured. Everything is by hand, and you can tailor the base of it to to be a tailor the guarantee to have names or dates or whatever you need in it. And they took us so long to make that we basically, we shared the problem with our customers and said, you know what, we can't do this. We're working all night seasoning and making pans and all day trying to sell them. So we just sort of agreed with everybody that we'll just put them on sale on the first of the month. And once we've sold as many as we can manufacture in that month, we'll just shut orders and we'll take kind of pre-orders. And what's been amazing about that is it's actually what we thought would be terrible customer service. People really understand the value of it, and it allows us to properly explain the effort that goes into making these things. And to us, that's something we'll never let go of. That's our core product. So I agree with you. It'll forever be direct customer in that regard, that top level. Yeah, no, it's definitely food for thought.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
The freedom to experiment. Like we used to joke in BBDO was probably the biggest network I worked in, that they used to say the freedom to fail was kind of like this catchphrase for a year or two. And the reality was, there was no freedom to fail. Like, and in worrying about success or failure, you just made mediocre stuff. And, there's no way you can future-proof an idea or a product. You've just got to try and be as single-minded as you can and hold your breath, hope for the best at some point. And I love that we can do that without any fear. Yeah, we were talking a little before we jumped on the podcast about the Coen brothers, the directors. And I remember reading once that they have this sort of blinding fear every time they watch their first edit of anything they've done, which they walked into with total confidence, obviously. They watch the first edit and it's a mess. And their first reaction is, shit, how are we going to pay the money back to all of these people? And I loved, well, that someone so kind of seemingly consistently successful had that same feeling. But also their solution to it was, rather than panicking, they would reduce the money for a short period of time anyway. They would reduce the money they requested. And it was something like, I think Fargo was the next one in that, which is this iconic film set in just blank white. And it was a $6 million film. And part of the reason I think that they sort of went that route was it made the fear of failure. I don't know. It made it easier to make mistakes and have happy accidents. Just taking some of that pressure off.
What's been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Frontline with customers. That's been, like, I would recommend that for anybody. We did it out of necessity, but Joe, Kate, and I for a long time would share managing our social media channels, which is just, oh my God, there are some amazing people, but there are some people who just want an argument. And it's the best learning I've had on what people are looking for, what they like and don't like about the industry. Like, if you, instead of deleting the posts, if you kind of talk to them, that to me was terrifying, but probably the most useful thing I've done. We've evolved products with customers because of feedback. We've kind of brought parts of our story forward in our communications that weren't being clear. I wouldn't recommend it full time because you get I don't know, it's pretty hard work. But I would recommend it to anybody that owns a business, is to take over the comment section for an ad or for a post at least once or twice a week.
Sorry, when you said frontline, did you mean being on the front line of that customer service experience and engagement, or you mean the front line of the product, the SaaS product?
Customer service.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, because I think there is actually a SaaS product out there called Frontline that does that kind of stuff.
No, no, that's a good name. But no, we were, I mean, just like manning um, the channel.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think flexibility. I think the ability to roll with unforeseen good and bad changes because it's never going to work out the way you map it. It just doesn't. It always makes sense in hindsight when someone talks through how they got to where they're going, but it just never works the other way.
I think Mike Tyson said everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
That's that's perfect. God, how did Mike Tyson become more eloquent than me?
I
That's
know, isn't it
perfect.
amazing? Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Do you need a guide on how to build your own money printing marketing machine? Do you feel like marketing is a mysterious art, only cracked by a chosen few? Fear not, we get it. Mastering marketing can be like taming a dragon. Download a copy of the Marketing Funding Flywheel ebook, which has 41 pages packed with over 50 tools and tips for your business. Let's get into it. Head to growasmallbusiness.com. We have plenty of resources waiting for you in the footer of our website. Can you talk about how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes, and advice for those listening?
I think we've only hired people we absolutely love, and I stand by that. We've never really walked away from with sort of any negativity. I don't believe, and that's because we hire really slowly. We take a lot of time to hire people. I think probably a mistake of ours, not the person that we hired, was I think our very first hire was a senior person when in reality we needed to build kind of from the ground up rather than having more managerial support. And that was a real challenge because we just fell in love with her and wanted to work with her, still want to work with her. But we just need to be able to implement these wonderful ideas. And so I would probably, we almost exclusively work with contractors and specialists now. It's more fun. We get to work with the best people, and we are constantly fed new ideas. You don't sort of end up in a vacuum talking about cast iron.
That's a great model. I had mentioned here before we hit record, Simon Smoltua from Harvey, an agency in Melbourne. I'll shoot you through his podcast. That was a great one, but very deliberately came out of marketing or advertising, similar to yourself. Big companies, was burnt out, just wanted a small team. And his wife Beck started Harvey, the business, and then Simon joined, and they both agreed we're going to keep it small. And it's around your size. I think they've kept the internal team, but they use those excellent specialists as well as contractors.
Yeah, it's just the choices are amazing. There are incredible people out there.
What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Culture, I think culture, we used to talk about this a lot in kind of corporate world. I think culture is too often, I mean, the fact we even kind of define it as culture is separate from what's actually happening. I think the minute you sort of talk about it as a thing, I think you've kind of almost lost it. I think fueling the stuff that people like doing together and making them rituals, I think that's a lovely way of doing it. Finding people that you get along with builds a natural, happy, fun environment. But I think I don't know. Maybe it's just I've got PTSD from working in a
Corporate.
corporate environment. But I think the minute you sort of start to map out culture, yeah, it becomes very abstract.
Tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I don't think we have. That's a really tricky one. I think my last year in the industry, I was working in Sydney, and the family had stayed in Auckland, and so I'd fly back on Friday, fly to work on Monday, and um, my balance feels really good after a year of doing that. I get to hang out with my boys and pick them up after school, but it's not good yet. Like I still, we jump back on, the computer the minute they're in bed. It's unfortunately, it's just the nature of starting something and loving it and wanting it to succeed is it's all consuming. I think we'll get better at separating it, but we're certainly not at that point.
Yeah, I had the same problem, not out of a matter of need, but just a passion for what I do. So I've actually got to put things in place. That's one reason why I got a chocolate Labrador Carlton supporter, because I've got to get him out of the house for an hour a day and play sports and other things. Otherwise, I could easily work 80-hour weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy, isn't it?
How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
That was something that we've been very conscious of in last year. We had very short amount of time in hindsight to do it, but we invested in a couple of kind of good courses, and one which has got sort of really great long-term support, which is basically the implementation of ecom and navigating the intricacies of the language, even the intricacies of connecting Shopify to Facebook to all of these platforms. And what we've managed to do is I guess find our way through it so we can run it ourselves, which I think was probably an early mistake, was handing that stuff over.
Well, I've got a few businesses that I help out with that are in the e-commerce space that do use Shopify. What was the name of that course that you did?
For good profits.
Who's that from? Who's the?
It's a company that helps purpose-led brands navigate the intricacies. Honestly, it's such a complex world. When I was first shown under the hood of how Facebook worked by one of their representatives, I was just, it's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. Like how much they know, because they know more than even anybody would assume. But also the levers you pull to deliver on that. And I don't know, like that I felt a little bit, I mean, I think I naturally felt overwhelmed by it, because I always thought if you make something good, people will buy it rather than tricking them into stuff. And so these guys kind of understand that it's a brand that is here to do something good. And so that it comes through, through that particular lens. So they understand, there are questions that they kind of work you through, like, the guilt around making money, which is something that I think we're still guilty of, I think any kind of company that's trying to do something good, it always feels like an icky conversation, but they're very good at managing those challenges, especially when you really believe in it, you want to do good.
Do you have a board of directors or advisors?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. We have. We've got as we're growing, I think our next kind of inclusion will be chefs, and that's kind of going to be our new partner list. We've got so far we've got sort of a couple of kind of really interesting high profile names that I can't talk about quite yet, but some key people who will come in and basically guide us on things like sustainability and actual, very, very proficient chefs. So we're designing for that top tier rather than just mass manufacturing. And that's going to be incredibly useful for us.
All right, Levi, we're on our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
It's the effort it takes. I think that's where, the 1 in 10 companies fail, or no, 9 out of 10 companies fail, only one succeeds, something like that. I think it's because at some point you're just like, I cannot be bothered, or this is just so hard, or I have no idea how to push through this. I think that's kind of the secret is, curiosity of a cat and the memory of a goldfish.
Have you heard of the rule of 4x2?
No?
I heard of VC when I was living in London say this, because he obviously gets hit up a lot for money from entrepreneurs. And he says to them, it's either going to take 4 times as long and cost twice as much, or take twice as long and cost 4 times as much. The difference is you get to choose which path.
Yeah, brilliant.
I just tell people that are thinking of starting a business, it's a lot fucking harder than what you think. Go and read The E-Myth is the first book you should read. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is really hard, and I wouldn't recommend it for everybody. I think you need to have something you believe in, because otherwise, if we were manufacturing ball bearings, I don't know, I just lots of moments I would have just said, should we just go do something else for a bit?
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
Conversations and podcasts, definitely. I'm when I've got a bit more time and have fewer children and fewer commitments, I'll be definitely reading more.
Yeah. Out of interest, do you prefer to read physical books or on Kindle, or are you happy to listen to them?
I did go through a real phase of listening to them. I love reading a real book. There's sort of a real beauty in that. And
Yeah.
the stuff I read at the moment is you know things to take me away from work. So I'm sort of slowly working my way through the classics.
Yeah. Have
Um,
you
yeah.
read Principles by Ray Dalio?
No, no, I haven't.
I'll send that to you as well. I think that book will
Please. Yeah.
resonate with you. It's a big book. I think it's like 11 hours on audio. I listen to all my stuff at 1.5 speed, but his voice is so good that Ray actually does the book. I'll send that one to you as well.
I'll have a look. Yeah.
Any great podcasts, online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
The one that we're using at the moment is the For Good Profits. I mean, we've got um, access to their. I feel like they're being a sponsor of the show now, but this is genuine feedback. We've got access to their team, and we get to sort of try out scenarios, talk about real time problems with them, and get kind of good guidance and advice. And there's a community connected to it, so you're working with a bunch of other businesses that are sharing sort of the same concerns.
Yep. One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
Notion's definitely, yeah, that's one that we seem to be mastering pretty easily. It's pretty intuitive and easy to kind of share and update, which is brilliant even for a small company. We're stretched over Australia and New Zealand, so it's important to kind of just know exactly where everything is.
Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out 6 years ago?
It'll get better.
Great. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Levi. I really enjoyed our chat. Congratulations to you, Kate, and Joe and the team. Phenomenal growth. Love the brand, love the product, and look forward to having you back on in a few years to hear where you're at.
I'd love that. I really appreciate it, and thanks for inviting me.
We're getting some great iTunes reviews. For those listening, please pop over to your podcast app and leave us a review.